Welcome to the Global Discussion, a discussion with creatives, leaders, and thinkers. My name is Simon Hodgkins. Today, it's a real treat. We're joined by Lisa Eaton. Lisa, you're very welcome to the show. Let's begin by asking you to tell us a little bit about yourself, give us a little bit about your journey, and then bring us up to speed on the wonderful business that you have today.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me, Simon. I've been listening to some of your past episodes and they're fascinating. So really loving the content you're putting out there. So I started in marketing back some 25 years ago now. So I'm probably aging myself a little bit there, but started back at Sage in the marketing department many moons ago. When Graham Wylie was at the helm, and learn, I guess, my craft of marketing then, which obviously was a very different space back then. And as Graham departed Sage, he took a small group of us with him. So I moved over to follow Graham to what became TSG, and I went there to set up the marketing department. Spent many years in different guises of marketing, realized I'd kind of hated technology, which is kind of ironic because I've ended up back in technology some 25 years later. But I fell into agency shortly after TSG and absolutely loved the prospect of selling marketing services to global businesses who were looking to grow their business or grow their product or their brand or their reputation. And spent most part of my career in agency. So really loved that kind of wild creative world mixed with the really kind of commercial strategic thinking. And then almost 10 years ago, I set up my own agency. So built a strategic marketing agency in the northeast of England where I'm based. And I did that for a couple of reasons. So mostly because I was working really closely with senior leaders in businesses at that time, and I could see a real shift in marketing. So having kind of spent the previous 10 years producing stuff, building campaigns, building websites, brochures, I guess producing things, I could see the shift that was coming in marketing in the decade ahead, which was going to be all around business impact, return on investment, commercial strategies. And I felt there was a real need for a strategic agency in the northeast of England who focused on strategy first and creative output, tactical execution second. So built what was Unwritten Group, and did great with that agency for almost 8 years. And then we hit a little bit of a glass ceiling. I felt like we couldn't break through this next barrier. And that wasn't down to lack of customers. We actually had a wait list for customers to access our services in the agency. It was down to talent recruitment. And there was a real shortage of strategic marketers, initially in the Northeast is what I felt. And that was stopping our growth because we had this pipeline of customers we couldn't access because our niche in the agency was strategic marketing. And so I started doing a bit of a research project. This is back sort of end of 2018, going into 2019, around what is academia teaching our marketers these days. It's a little while since I'd been in education, so I was slightly out of touch. And what are they being taught, and what is the CIM teaching our marketers, and why can't I find this strategic skill set? And it was no great surprise that the curriculums that marketers were being taught both in higher education and via the CIM just were very out of date, in my opinion, were very theory based. They were talking about techniques and practices from decades ago that hadn't really moved with the times or weren't really that relevant in industry today. So I got a little hung up on this research project, started to grow it outside of the Northeast and did a piece in the whole of the UK, and then went over to the States and did a similar piece in the US and then in Europe to see if this was a small regional problem or if this was a giant global problem. And the latter ended up being the obvious, that we weren't the only region nor the only country struggling with this gap between both education and industry. And so, to cut a very long story short, I decided to tackle that problem head on by building what was initially a training academy, which is the business I own now, which is called Fabric Academy. And our mission initially, when we set out to build that business almost 3 years ago, was to bridge the gap between education and industry. and give marketers real life, practical, hands-on marketing education that would support them and see them to be successful in their role today. That's the business I'm still in and still running. And we now have customers all over the world, and we work with large businesses who have big and complex marketing teams to help educate them, make them more commercially minded and strategic in their leadership. And we coach and mentor them to make sure they feel confident and supported in their roles. So I've come full circle from in-house to agency to in education, I guess now, but always with marketing at the core of everything I've done.
Well, thank you so much indeed for sharing that background and journey, because it's amazing. Like yourself, I was a director in Sage for about 5 years or so. And it's fascinating to hear that you were there at the beginning with Graham Wylie, who was, very well respected. Sage went on to become, I mean, today it's a FTSE 100 company. It's a global brand. It's huge, millions and millions of customers. And you went with Graham originally to that other business, and that led you on to other things. And then you run your own agency for a long time, as you're saying. And that brings you on to Fabric today. And I do want to talk to you about Fabric if I can, because one of the bugbears, I think, with education, if I can be so bold, is that particularly in marketing, I find, and definitely in technology, um, by the time you finish the learning and the practical piece, whether that's a college degree or whatever, the industry's moved on, the technology's moved on, the marketing tech stack, the marketing tech stack is different. Um, so it's that sort of difference between what you learn in a traditional education and what the practical requirements are for somebody joining the workforce or joining a company at a senior level. And you must find that challenge a lot in Fabric. You must be addressing that to some degree, Lisa.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, quite frankly, that's the entire reason we built Fabric. It started off as an idea, as a recruitment pipeline, a talent pipeline into the agency. But we very quickly realized that, in fact, businesses all over the world were struggling with exactly the same thing, that they were either getting marketing graduates into their first time roles. And in fact, those graduates were hugely underprepared for what a marketing role in industry actually looked like. Sadly, and this is still the case, and we're trying hard to tackle this, but we're finding that lots of our marketing grads don't even land their first role in industry because that is such a big issue, and they're being lost to hospitality or to retail. Or we still have, I guess, the common misconception around marketing being a nice to have in businesses, instead of a real enabler to growth and a very important strategic function within a business. We have businesses who still believe marketing, they can turn it on or they can turn it off, and it can be a cost center to a business as opposed to a growth enabler. And that's in my opinion down to the fact that they've likely got marketers in their business who aren't well trained, who aren't commercial and strategic thinkers, and are just spending budget without any major strategy behind it. So there's a bit of a mixed bag and an ingredient, I think, making up a few of the challenges that we've had in the marketplace around marketing education. But we're trying really hard to work with businesses to change that perception, to say that marketing is one of the most crucial functions within a business. No business can survive without marketing, in my opinion. And when you get marketing right, when you get a really excellent team of marketeers, you can see huge growth within the business. And also trying to work with education to make them aware that the curriculums that they have need to be built with industry in mind. In fact, they need to be built with a collaboration between industry and academia to make sure that we are setting our future marketers up for success in business as well.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more, first and foremost, because having somebody that can hit the ground running, that understands the real world environment, and maybe some of the pressures, challenges, and opportunities that a modern marketer is faced with. And I know brands that you work with appreciate that. And you work with some big global brands, whether everything from Boots to Heineken and many, many more, to develop their marketing teams. But what do you think is the secret sauce? What's the sort of magic ingredient that they want from Fabric?
Yeah, and they're all very similar in what they want from us. They want their marketeers to be strategic and commercial thinkers, regardless of their seniority. So whether that's a very junior marketer to mid-marketer to senior or to a CMO, and they're not being taught strategy and commercial acumen in education, that, or they're being taught it from a theoretical point of view, but not how to actually put it in place for their role. So they want their marketeers to be more strategic, and less tactical. They want their marketeers to be supported by somebody who's been there and done it and has worn the t-shirt and has the battle scars. Again, academics for me haven't always been there. They haven't been in role, and they haven't always been faced with some of the challenges that you're often faced within a marketing role. So having very senior practitioners who can coach marketeers and help them with their on-the-ground challenges is really, really important. And of course, they want consistent and constant up-to-date education from us outside of that foundational piece of strategy building. They want to know what techniques are being used and successful, what trends are happening in the industry, what technologies just launched that could make them more effective or more efficient. So Fabric is made up of those three things: that kind of foundational strategic knowledge, how to build a marketing strategy from scratch. And rather than just teach it, we teach it and we make them apply it. So they're building a live strategy for their organization whilst they're with us. And that's being assessed, and they're being coached personally through that journey to make sure they understand the theory and can apply it practically and correctly. We match them with a marketing coach who is a marketing practitioner who's been there, done it, and has the t-shirt to support them in any area they need. And then we give them monthly education snippets and masterclasses to keep them up to date on best in class, what's going on in the industry now, what do they need to know that's fundamental to their role. And I truly believe those three ingredients are what can really develop a marketing team from a mediocre marketing team into a world-class marketing team.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I want to ask you, if I can, about the pandemic. Not to go down a pandemic rabbit hole, but what impact did that have on your business? Because a lot of businesses automatically overnight had to think about working remotely, having people maybe not necessarily in the office or in the town or city where they are, but being able to tap into almost this global talent pool. And I know your business, you're sort of partnering now as almost an L&D partner for businesses globally, not just the northeast of England. How did that all play into your thinking? Is that a really important part of your strategy, Lisa?
Yeah, it is. And it's probably because of COVID, which was actually both a really challenging time and an absolutely brilliant time for us. So when COVID hit, I had the agency at the time, and I had a team of 14 people, and we were all based in the Northeast, and we were office based, traditional 9 to 5 and some, as agency life is. And at that time, the idea of building a training academy was something that was ticking along in the background. And as you'll know from talking to many, many agency owners, your internal projects are always the things that sit at the very bottom of the list, because you're kind of at the mercy of clients, and they're demanding usually, who need everything yesterday. So when the pandemic hit, we were hit pretty hard in the agency. We had about 83% of our customers kind of pause their retainers at the time and say, can we revert to project-based? And so we had that challenge. I had a challenge of managing a team of 14 people with high overheads. We had a big fancy office in Newcastle at the time. And making sure that business stayed stable and that it was able to come out and reach its potential again after the pandemic. But what the pandemic did do for us, which was incredible, it gave us some time to think and time to breathe, because we weren't on this chaotic journey of serving customers, and we had a little bit of time to think about the training academy. It allowed us to catapult that business idea really quickly. And what had been a project running behind the scenes, almost at the lowest priority level, it suddenly became top focus, top priority. And what it did is changed our thinking around our access to reach customers globally. And so again, what started as quite a small idea in the beginning, we'd serve agencies, we'd serve ambitious businesses, we'd serve businesses with large marketing teams, probably in the UK first and foremost. it meant we were able to reach a global audience with the platform we'd built almost from day one of launch. And so we very quickly acquired some customers in the States. We acquired some customers in Europe, and then we now have learners in all continents across Africa, Philippines, Far East, Middle East. So I guess it really did change my thinking, particularly as a business leader as well, from a predominantly traditional 9 to 5 in the office, Monday to Friday workplace, to a fully remote team, fully remote platform, and fully remote and global clients. So the pandemic was a really interesting time, a challenging time, but also a time for great opportunity for us. And obviously out came Fabric from that.
No, that's great. And it's wonderful to hear about the global expansion. And I'm going to come back to you and ask you a little bit about how you grow a business and funding and all that in a moment. But before I do, just one last thing on this topic. You mentioned matching people with coaches too. And it's not necessarily about coaches, but my question is about this multi-layered approach to learning, because often learning can be quite siloed. You learn this way, you learn that way, it's online, it's in person, it's in a lecture hall. Whereas you're kind of blending that approach, aren't you? How did that come together, and how is that working for you as a strategy? Is that something that people that are on the platform and the brands particularly like, because it feels a lot more rounded approach to learning?
Yeah, it's been fundamental, I think, to our success. And I genuinely believe it's what will see us as the market leader in this space. You're completely right. So you can go and you can learn something, and you can tick all the boxes to say you've learned it, and you know this knowledge now, and in fact you've sat an exam and you've got top grades. It doesn't mean you can apply it correctly, and it doesn't mean it's all sunk in. And therefore, when you're faced with a challenge or a problem or a curveball on what has been theory based, and as marketers, we're constantly dealing with curveballs, it doesn't teach you how to think commercially and strategically about how can I apply this technique in a different circumstance, or how can I adapt it to make it work for me or my business. So for me, education is great. I'm an obsessive learner, but you can't always just take theory. You have to be able to take theory and apply. And the technique of a really, really brilliant marketer is the ability to think outside of the box and to take what they've learned and apply it so that it's successful in the environment that they're in. Now, that's a very difficult thing to teach when it's just theory. And it's also very difficult to teach when you haven't got a one-on-one relationship with that learner, because everybody learns that in very different ways. So matching learners, giving them that theory and that education, that practical knowledge is the foundation. Matching them with a marketing practitioner who works with them on a one-on-one basis can really get into the behavioral science of that particular marketer, so they can understand what they've understood and where they're struggling and apply it, why they're struggling to apply it, how can they teach them a technique that will help them apply it and apply it confidently. So that for me is what really sets apart both education and ongoing accountability of practical application of that. And the constant education is super important as well. We blink and there's another 3 tech stacks out there that we need to be thinking about or know how to learn, or there's a new trend just hit the market and we need to be aware of it so we can decide whether it's applicable to our business and we should be hopping on it or staying well away. So the blend of both foundational knowledge, that kind of behavioral one-on-one support from a human, a real human person who's been there and done it, and then the continuous up-to-date relevant stuff is, I think, what makes us very, very unique. And having spent 25 years as a marketer, from junior to mid to senior to business leader, CMO, and everything in between, I genuinely feel those 3 ingredients are what make an incredible marketeer and eventually an amazing leader as well. So yeah, I fully believe that mix is what sets us apart.
No, it's great. It's great to hear. Thanks for expanding on that for me. And I love what you said about you blink and all of a sudden the tech stack's expanded, or there's new tools to go and investigate. It's very, very true in the marketing world, isn't it?
It is.
Um, the other question I want to ask you, if you don't mind, because this isn't your first business. You've run successful businesses before. You've founded businesses, and as a woman in business, a founder in business. sometimes scaling, raising money can be quite tricky. Still a lot of the fundraising doesn't go to women-founded businesses. It's still a very small percentage. It's single figures. It's crazy when you look at it in that instance. I just wondered if I could ask you a question about that in terms of scaling a successful business, in terms of fundraising, in terms of strategic growth. You've got some experience in this area, haven't you?
I have, and I've done it from both sides, I guess. So this is my third business. The previous two businesses were both bootstrapped. They were both service businesses, so they needed little in the way of capital investment, and it was very simple to be able to build those businesses on a shoestring and grow them organically and reinvest the profits for future growth. So that was one methodology, and probably the methodology that I'd always known in business. Until I decided to build a tech platform, which was a whole different beast. And quite honestly, I threw myself into the world of fundraising quite naively, without a lot of experience, as a solo female tech founder at probably the most economically challenging time you could do it. So 2 years ago. When they say naivety is sometimes a blessing, I absolutely believe that, because had I gone in knowing what I know now, would I have done it again? Possibly not. But I knew I needed to raise investment with this business, because we were building a platform, right? And it takes investment to get that platform and that product to market before you can physically sell it. So I did bootstrap the business for about the first 15 months. I reinvested my own savings and my salary from the agency that I was making into building the business. So, I did self-fund for a period. And we did pretty well at that point. I'd been very used to building websites and applications and platforms in the agency, so I knew what I was doing, and I had a great team around me. And we were able to get an MVP to market without any investment at all. When we got that MVP to market, one of the challenges we had is that suddenly everybody wanted it and everybody loved it. So our issue was around scaling that to be able to deal with the demand of the product and also make the MVP into something that was much more tangible and much more beneficial to our businesses. So that was the reason for going for investment at that time. I also had recognized quite quickly that we had product market fit quicker than I thought we'd had. And that there was the need for us to be, I guess, a market leader in this space, because of the unique offering that we had. Still at this moment, there's nobody offering that mix of, education, ongoing, continuous, up-to-date education and coaching. So I knew we wanted to be the market leader there, which was also one of the reasons for the investment. And so I went out to market with a fundraise strategy. Initially, our plan was to raise $500,000 to be able to get the platform fully developed, the SaaS model and the subscription model off to market, and to also grow in a more global kind of way rather than just the organic, kind of sporadic way we had been growing at the very early stages. Went through that process. It was no mean feat, as you say. Females get less than 2% of funding still in the UK, which is shocking. So it was tough. It was a tough climate to go into an investment raise. I think what was great for us is that it wasn't just an idea at that stage. We had developed the concept, we developed the proposition, we had a clear market, we had some early interest, and we had an MVP in market. So we were starting to generate revenue. So we were able to secure that funding through angels, and essentially then we were able to use that investment to fast track the development of the platform and also our route to a more global marketplace as well. Lots of learnings. Mostly that investment story is a one over a couple of glasses of wine, but it was really a great process to go through. As we mentioned earlier, the investment piece is something that kind of sits in the background continuously when you're building a tech platform. There's always something else to do in the next level, and we're really excited about what that future piece looks like for us as Fabric. But happy to have closed it as well and just be now pressing on with a day job, which is the mission in mind.
Yeah, well, congratulations, because I think you've closed one or two rounds at this stage.
We've closed two now, yeah. So we've
Yeah.
closed two rounds. We closed the last earlier in April this year. So yeah, that's us out of fundraising for a small period of time at least.
Well, congratulations. That's great to hear. And, speaking from my own personal experience, I've worked for large PLCs and stock market listed companies, and I've also worked for startups where we've, scraped the money together. We've had to raise funding and, and then exit successfully. And it's a journey. And I found it extremely difficult and challenging at times. And, on the converse of that, or the opposite side of that coin, also extremely exhilarating and exciting at times. But I know how difficult that is. And when you think about that single digit investments that go into female founding businesses, it's incredibly difficult. So, congratulations with all your success, and particularly in closing your second round and continued success in that space. It really is fantastic. But I suppose that the key takeaways for me as you were talking there is you bootstrapped up initially. You had an MVP in place. You had a workable demo. You had customers. You could show that it was bringing in money, and of course that helps in the investment story. It's not easy, even with that. It's not easy, but
I
yeah, it's
think
great.
I think one of the strategies that we did, I mean, lucky, we're pretty good marketers. So we had a very kind of, very intelligent marketing strategy that sat behind the launch of the product. And one of the things that we decided to do very early on was go after our ICPs, even though we knew they were going to be much longer relationships to develop and get over the line. Those big global brands would help us in the fundraise and also the future growth and strategy. So going after Itsu and Revolution Beauty and Boots and the Body Shop, and some of those big brands that were difficult to get over the line and took a lot longer than what we potentially could have gone after that low-hanging fruit. The strategy was always in place that we would take our time to develop those, because once we got them, one, they'd see the impact very quickly because they had very large marketing teams in complex in their makeup and having all sorts of challenges that we could help fix. But two, we knew those logos on the books would make a big difference in our fundraising strategy and also our future marketing strategy as well. So there was a lot of planning that went into it, and a lot of thought that went into it that has served us very well, I think, as well.
No, it's fabulous, and it makes such a difference to an investor story to have those kind of brands in the documentation, and happy and growing with the platform. And I love what you said. We're pretty good at marketing. Well, if you're not, we're all in trouble, Lisa.
We're in big trouble.
Yeah. Um, I want to ask you something else if I can now, just to shift gears a little bit. When you plan, obviously you have to do planning in your business, but when you think about fabric in 12 months' time or 18 months' time, what's on your horizon? What's on your roadmap? How does that work in your world at the moment? How do you go about thinking about, the planning side of things?
Yeah, I mean, I what's interesting is I think our what we call is our marketing strategy is very, very in sync with our business strategy. They're almost not two separate documents or pieces of work. They are so intrinsic, and this is where I was talking about businesses knowing how important marketing can be in the business growth strategy. They are almost one. And so whenever we're thinking about what the future of the business looks like, marketing is so integral in that process that everything is pinned around customer acquisitions, logos that we want, markets that we want to infiltrate, impact that we want to make. And we're very strategic in our thinking about what is the impact, what's the legacy, what's the lasting impression that we want to have, mixed very closely with the commercial success that's going to help us get there and make sure we're a sustainable and growing business. I mean, I've got two, I guess, missions with Fabric. One is the business mission, and one is very, very personal to me that sits in Fabric, but is much more about an emotional impact. And my piece particularly is around changing the perception of marketing as a whole in the world, So people look at marketing, as I say, as a real strategic function and an absolute necessity in their business. And then the way we're going to do that is by educating marketers correctly to be great marketers, to not be wasting budget, to not be spending budget, and not doing things that aren't going to move the dial in the business. So it comes down to the fundamentals that perception of marketing has to change. But it has to start with educating marketers so they're well equipped to be successful, and then businesses will see the impact of that success on the bottom line, essentially. Fabric's mission is really simple. We want to be where world-class marketers develop and grow. We want to be with marketeers and their businesses for the long term. Our mission is to our business clients that we will retain your marketers, we'll keep them happy and confident in their roles, we'll keep them at the top of their game, and we'll surround them with a network who are also there to keep them, at the forefront of trends. But essentially, we want to see business success, right? We want to see those businesses flourish and grow and, get their ICPs in and market to them in a way where we can get them as far down the funnel as possible, and then keep them and retain them to make sure they can expand them. So, we're clear on our mission. We want to lead that market. We want to be known as the go-to training provider for marketeers all over the world. And so whether we'll do that in the next 12 or 18 months, we'll see, but we've got pretty ambitious plans of when we want to reach that target. So we're not too far out that time period.
I think you're well on your way, Lisa. I loved what you said. I really liked what you said about moving the needle, moving the dial, making that positive impact, and the importance of marketing people in organizations. Because we often find that the marketers can get really busy with the urgent things, that marketing hamster wheel, if you like, instead of carving out that time to focus on the important things versus the urgent. And it's normally the important things that aren't urgent that actually move the dial, that actually change that strategy. You must find that a lot, Lisa.
Absolutely. Yeah, you couldn't be more right there. And often I feel this isn't even the fault of marketers. It's sometimes the fault of the senior leaders, because C-suites like to see movement. They still like to see stuff. They like to feel that things are happening. And the way they feel things are happening is sometimes by evidencing a new campaign's gone out, or a new launch has happened, or and so marketers are sometimes driven by pressure from the top to be doing stuff. Often the things that actually really move the dial on those business objectives is the strategic thinking, the planning, the research, the understanding the data, some of those real integral kind of strategic elements that allow the marketers the thinking and breathing space to go, this is working and building an impact. This is not working. We need to change it up. This is what we've got to stop doing. This is a trend we shouldn't be on, even though we want to be. And this is a trend so it's marketers do need that time to be able to think strategically and be creative. And often there is a pressure from above to be doing. So it's a little bit of breaking that mentality and that cycle. But of course, giving those marketers the tools and the education and the support they need to be able to make sure they've got the strategic knowledge to know where it's going to move the dial, what they should be doing more of and what they should be doing less of. So I do think there's a bit of an education piece between the C-suite and the marketeers as well. But I think there is definite progress being made. We just need to reach a bigger audience in order to make that impact on a bigger scale. But I can definitely see that starting to move from even 5 years ago.
No, I totally agree. Thank you, Lisa. Finally, I've got two really important questions for you.
Yeah.
The first one is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you think we should include in our conversation and time together today? That might be something we've already touched on that you want to expand on, or maybe something completely new. And my second part of the question is, if people want to connect with you, connect with Fabric, get involved there, where's the best place to point people to, Lisa?
Okay, so first question. I think that probably the only thing to add to the discussion is around L&D budgets, because we talk a lot about this. So a lot of the businesses that we work with are, leading global businesses in their field, and L&D budgets are just part and parcel of what their team get. But we talk to a lot of businesses who still don't have somebody leading on people, somebody leading on training and development, or budget set aside for their marketing teams to be able to learn and develop. So for me, I think that's a conversation that, we should be having as leaders regularly around how can the best businesses in the world make sure they're supporting their teams by building in L&D budgets so those teams do have access to platforms such as Fabric or, other elements of coaching and mentoring that will help them develop in their role. So this is something we come across, a lot, and there tends to be no gray area. And maybe this is just the people we're dealing with, but we're either businesses who are at the forefront of what they're doing, and L&D is just a no-brainer. It's not even a thought. Nobody's pitching for that budget. It's there. Or businesses who have got no L&D budget, and it's blowing their minds that their staff are asking for training budget. So I think more businesses being aware that, particularly in the marketing sphere, if you want your marketeers to be the best and at the forefront of technology and trends and techniques and leading the way and delivering a positive impact, you have to be willing to train them. You cannot expect them to do the day job and to be out there free learning through LinkedIn or HubSpot or all these great platforms that offer free learning, but a regular marketers do need that regular support from education, from other practitioners in the field, and from coaches. So I think businesses being aware of that is important. And secondly, for those who would love to know more about Fabric, you can check us out on the website, which is just fabric-academy.com. Both for CMOs and marketers of all levels, we've got tons of free insights, toolkits, guides, all sorts of everything on there. So even if you just want to indulge in a little bit of that content, there's plenty to kind of get you going there. And you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn, so it's just Lisa Eaton. I share a lot of marketing content, but also leadership content and content around growing and scaling businesses there as well.
Well, that's great. And that brings me nicely to the end of the discussion today here on the Global Discussion. I want to thank everybody who's watching or listening to this episode around the world. Make sure that you follow, like, subscribe to everything I need you to do to help support the show. And also go and check out what Lisa Eaton and the team are doing over at Fabric. It really is an important endeavor that she's involved in here and helping to raise the marketing standards for individuals and for brands across the world. But Lisa, thank you so much indeed for your time. I hope that people join me back here for some more discussions with creatives and leaders and thinkers just like Lisa. Thanks for being on the show today, Lisa. It's great to talk to you again.
Thank you so much, Simon. It's been wonderful to chat. Thank you.